we have to press the government for reparations. Listen.
So I'm just learning about this new movement called ADOS, American Descendants of Slavery. And from my understanding, this new ADOS movement is about reparations for us African Americans. It's about reparations for our ancestors who basically built this nation but never got paid accordingly. Now, some of our brothers, a lot of us, have an issue with calling ourselves American.
And for any organization that calls itself American but refuses to call itself African is an organization I cannot rock with. That's number one.
Because of the traumatic way our ancestors was brought over here and the things that our ancestors had to endure, a lot of us have an issue with calling ourselves American. You know, the interesting thing is, from my understanding, when slavery ended, like other African descendants, like say the Caribbean islands, they adjusted and they transitioned to their national name. So the African descendants, all the Caribbean, they no longer identified themselves as Negro and black, because from my understanding, in slavery, we was all Negroes, we was all blacks during slavery. But when slavery ended, the African descendants in Jamaica became known as Jamaicans. The African descendants in Dominican Republic became known as Dominicans. The African descendants in Haiti became known as Haitians. The African descendants in Trinidad became known as Trinidad. You know, so on and so forth. The Antiguans, they took on their national name. It seemed like all the other African descendants took on their national name after slavery. For whatever reason, us African Americans, we never really transitioned and became proud American. I guess maybe because, you know, we was going through the Jim Crow era and everything. We never really transitioned to be called American. So now in 2020, as many African American men, we have an issue with just calling ourselves American. Some of us do call ourselves American.
I'll be the first one to tell anybody, I'm not an African American. I'm an American. I was born on American soil. But I did go back to the motherland, and I love it.
But a lot of us have an issue with calling ourselves American. The thing about it is, it's factually correct. It's legally and factually correct. Because of the traumatic way our ancestors was brought to this country, you know, a lot of us don't like calling ourselves American. Through slavery, many of us been trained to call ourselves black. We've been trained to call ourselves the black man. You know, we want to say we Asiatic, we want to say we African, we want to say, you know, we Aboriginal, we Native, you know, all of these other terminologies. But by legal definition, at this point in time, according to the law that governs our communities, the law that governs our businesses, we are American citizens. We are classified as American citizens. And though a lot of us may not be American in heart and mind, we're not American, you know, our heart is somewhere else. Some of our brothers call themselves Israelites, whether we Muslim, Kemetic, Christian, atheist, scientists, whatever we want to call ourselves. According to the law that governs our community, according to the law that governs our businesses, we are American citizens. We have social security cards, we have driver's license, we have birth certificates. By legal definition, factual legal terminology, we are American citizens. So that's what I like about the organization, because, you know, in order to get any kind of legal reparations, it's going to have to be done legally and factually. There's a couple of founders. To hear the founders speak, this is just some of the words of the founders that struck me as interesting.
Welcome to Tone Talks. How's everybody doing today? This is Antonio Moore coming to you from Tone Talks with a quick hit. I just wanted to go over American DOS, ADOS, and explain how it wasn't created by Russians, and these aren't Russian bots. These are our fans, Tone Talks and Breaking Brown fans, that have been collaborating, getting together on black politics for several years. So what you actually see is that black Americans from Louisville to California to Chicago have collaborated around the reality of underrepresentation of lineage inside of talking about American blackness. The only thing that makes American blackness really rooted and matter is the fact that we were slaves, and then post-slavery we had peonage and the like. What you see is that a small group of recent immigrants post-1980 have dominated blackness and made it about just, you know, not getting a taxi and being mistreated at the workplace today. And none of that is actually what roots blackness. What roots blackness is what is inside of black families across this nation: the poverty, the lack of wealth, the lack of access. And we're going to get into that today. We'll get into why we created it, why it's essential, and how it's just awful that these pundits have went around with no actual support saying that Russians created this. This was American DOS, ADOS was created out of the brain trust of myself, Antonio Moore. I'm a UCLA grad, Loyola Law School grad, nominated for an Emmy for the documentary Freeway Cracking the System, in which we uncovered the Nicaraguans involved with the Iran-Contra scandal. Go check it out, IMDb me. And then also you have Yvette Carnell of Breaking Brown, who worked in Capitol Hill, graduate of Howard HBCU, and a political commentator who has a long-standing show called Breaking Brown that's on YouTube. I myself have a show on Dash Radio. I've done it every week for a year and a half. And I also have a YouTube channel called Tone Talks. So this is real legitimate discussions. So the accusation that this ADOS, American DOS, American Descendants of Slavery, was created by Russian bots is not only irresponsible, not only dangerous, but it points to a larger problem with these pundits, that they don't understand Black America, what's going on, and it begs to question why they're on TV at all. Understand why we made it American DOS. First thing that we wanted to do is really assert the reality that descendants of American slavery are largely being left behind. When we understand numbers, there are about 42 million blacks in this country living in 20 million homes. The middle black home is worth $1,700 without depreciating assets. The bottom 90% of Black America has little to no wealth. The bottom half is worth less than $1. The top 10% of black families largely have 75% of the small 2.6% of wealth that black people have. Let's talk about it. But when we talk about this thing, what people don't understand is, of the 42 million blacks, maybe 4 to 5 million are either first or second generation immigrants. It's just a loud bunch. And in essence, what you see right now is, while we do jail, they become professionals under the guise of being American DOS, African American. Joy Reid's show, largely to me, is only on the air because white America sees her as a representation of the 37 million ADOS. The problem is she doesn't understand our issues at all. She literally gets on the air and says stuff that is against the interests of native blacks. Now, somebody might say, well, then what's the difference? Let me use one data point to explain. And before I say that, this data point, understand that I did a report with Sandy Darity last year, 10 Myths to Close the Racial Wealth Gap. You can find it on the Duke website. What we were able to show is the mythology around closing the racial wealth gap. Did an article on Fortune magazine covering that study. So this is all legitimate data that comes out of the Federal Reserve, used by economists from Sandy Darity to Matt Brunig to Dark Hamilton to Thomas Shapiro. You know, I'm not here to play around with ideas of what I believe. I only talk to what I know. And I only know what I know because there are experts and there are true data points that come out of the Federal Reserve, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, things that real black pundits are supposed to be using to support themselves. But too many of us are talking about what I believe. So let's get right into it. And what you see is that in LA, they did a color of wealth report to give a framing of this thing, of this issue, of why ADOS is so important. In it, what we saw is that native blacks in LA are worth a mere $200 liquid. That's it. You look over at African, at Nigerian numbers, in particular in Los Angeles, the middle Nigerian family is worth $100,000. $100,000 hard. And I think fundamentally what we end up with is not understanding who immigrates here, why they immigrate here, and how it's problematic to see them in the same box of quote-unquote blackness as somebody like myself who grew up with single parent, 16-year-old parents, who has multiple generations of costs that come from American slavery, American action. You can't understand this without understanding the chart I'm showing you now. In this chart, I break things down into quadrants. This is how I seen it in my mind. I created this chart. What it shows is that slavery lasted nearly all of the 1600s, all of the 1700s, all of the 1800s, and bled into the 1900s. What you have right now is a group of people, from Obama to Kamala, that came largely after the major cost of being black in America, and came in from elite backgrounds and were brought here for whatever particular purpose by the government. whether it be to cover up black struggle or whether it be because they asked to come. They're here now, but they do not represent the struggle of what it costs to actually make America and why America owes reparations and are repairing to the American DOS, the African American community. You can't understand this argument without going all the way back to Jesse Jackson in 1980s with the creation of the term African American. To understand this in a larger context, you should go read my article, African Americans Are More Than Just Africans in America. Fundamentally, the term African American is summarily flawed in the sense that it is a continent and a country, African American. Africans don't use it in Africa. But when they come here, it's an access point to all of that lineage cost, to all of that access fighting that we did so that they can start off not at the crux of being a newer immigrant, rather someone who has longstanding access, debt with the country. And that's what's going on. That's what is happening right now. So you come here from West Africa and you can access Jackie Robinson scholarships and Thurgood Marshall programs because you're black. But I can't go to Nigeria and access anything. And I think that, one, Nigeria is a developing nation, so that's really weird that I go there and I get nothing. But then when you come here, you get everything under the guise that we're all black, when this stuff was created to repair the reason why I struggle as a DOS. Let's get it. For those people that say, well, the Caribbean had DOS as well. I respect that. But I also respect that Haiti was colonized by the French, Jamaica, England. I respect the fact that those debts are owed by those countries that oppress those people. And if anything is given to that group, I'm not going to step in the way of it. We got a problem here. We have not dealt with the reality of how debts are paid, how litigation is brought, how who's owed what, and as a result, who's left standing on the outside are American DOS families that are carrying the cost of this. Come on, because you gotta see this thing for what it is. What I additionally want to say is, in no way is the American DOS movement, the ADOS movement, perpetuating any sense of violence or anything against anyone. What we are saying is that we're going to stand up for ourselves now. What we are saying is we're going to demand that you speak for us. What we are saying is that I don't have any family outside of the country, so DACA really isn't my main or even on the list of my concerns. Yeah, we saying that. In a country where there's lead in the water in Flint, in a country where there's feces in the backyard in Alabama, Loudoun County, in a country where there are more black men incarcerated than all women on the planet. Let me say that again. There are more American descendant of slave black men incarcerated than all women on the planet. There's about 700,000 in each group. 4 billion women planet-wide produce 700,000 prisoners. 20 million African American males, including babies that come from slavery, American slavery, produce about 700,000 prisoners. And another million on probation. How then do you want me to talk about the border if we're dealing with survival here? I think that the reason it's important to you is you do have family outside the country. Well, you need to have your own group. Part of the problem is we don't know the numbers. There's about 42 million, 40 million blacks. Only 300, 400,000 are Nigerian. Only 1 million are Jamaican. Every other group is nominal from there. If you look at Joy Reid, she comes from the Congo. We might not have 100,000 people from the Congo in America. So how are you on TV representing the ADOS community? Because there's a confusion about who we are, and what we stand for. But this goes deeper. We start looking back, we start seeing this whole attempt to undermine any driver for black politics. McCarthyism on full display with both Reid and also Rye. McCarthyism harkening back to when anytime somebody spoke up about politics that wasn't in the mainstream, it was the Russians that did it. Well, that's what you see with Rye and Reid. It's this attempt to undermine the growth of black politics by saying that the Russians are doing it with no support to say that the Russians are doing it. I don't know no Russians. Come on. I'm coming. This is the reckoning with identity that's needed to happen for a generation. When I was at UCLA, all I saw was these weird mixes of people that were speaking for black people all across Los Angeles and didn't know nobody all across Los Angeles. This is what's going on for a generation. When Obama came into office, I told everybody in 2007, he's not going to do nothing for black people. People say, oh, he a black man. I said, this isn't about being a black man. I said it back then. I said he's Kenyan and then he's white. He has no bones buried that come from slavery here. And that's what you need. America didn't have an African-American president yet. And America can't have one because it can't deal with itself. Because there is a reckoning that goes to the core of America that an African-American president brings about. When Ta-Nehisi Coates sat down with Obama, he basically said that immigrants shouldn't pay for reparations. Well, of course he would believe that. Because he don't come from ADOS. But see, he was supposed to represent the progress of a nation past all of the cost of ADOS. Well, it's still in my family. It's in your family. When you look at this thing, the bottom half of ADOS families are worth less than $1 combined. We look at this thing. What percentage of the top 10% of little black families that have any American wealth are really just Nigerian or wealthy Jamaicans or wealthy Haitians? Because there are small sections. Understand that there's an overrepresentation in corporate jobs in Hollywood of these elite groups, and the problem is that what they can do, meaning Hollywood and finance and Google with Silicon Valley, is basically say that they have diversity when they've never really dealt with the fact you don't have no ADOS in your hiring practices. What they can say is that, well, black people aren't hired for these roles. Like you got Cynthia Erivo playing Harriet Tubman. You got Selma, the lead roles, Coretta Scott King and Martin Luther King were Nigerians. Well, everybody says it's because they're more trained. No, train ADOS people. We've been having this problem for generations now. Come on. Train ADOS people and then they can do the role. I'm coming to you today to tell you ADOS, American DOS, was created to create a boundary so that our group can define itself and then make demands of what it needs, not only to survive, but also to gain the position it always was due in this country. Our bodies built this country before you even get to our labor. The bodies of American DOS was worth more than all of everything America had combined. All of the railroads, all of the land, all of the everything, the tools, everything combined. Just the bodies. A single slave with 3 years of field training was worth more than a house. This institution is what made America. So every American DOS should have a unique and privileged position where they don't pay for schools, where they get access to elite level homeownership, where their children go to elite schools. Every American DOS should be the elite version of America. And I'm going to fight tooth and nail for it. This is not about division, it's about truth. If I go to Nigeria and an elite Nigerian that came here goes back with me, he gains an elite position in Nigeria I don't occupy. Why we don't have to be the same there? And I don't think that you understand. You cannot have reparations without this reckoning. Let me say it again. You can't get to reparations without this reckoning. I just had a discussion with the leading economist in the area of reparations, William Darity of Duke University, on Friday on my show on Dash Radio. You can watch the whole show on my last video. What we discussed is not only how you would distribute reparations. You would look at two factors. One, do you have a single ancestor that descended from American slavery? And number two, in the last 10 years, have you marked black on the census or a major national application of some sort? And I think what we have right now is a lack of understanding of what that means. It means that right now, if we did not institute ADOS, American DOS, as a delineation, you could have Nigerians receiving reparations when they have no damage from America. You could have Caribbeans from Haiti and Jamaica receiving reparations and they literally have no damage from America as a result of what reparations is repairing, which is slavery and peonage and Jim Crow period after. People would say, what about Marcus Garvey? What about Stokely Carmichael? What about Harry Belafonte? These are singular people. Go study immigration and see when the boom happens. It still isn't even a massive group now, but the people you're talking were trickles of people, and those people essentially binded in right around the Jim Crow period and actually joined into the black struggle. That's not what's going on today. And if those individual small families can show damage, then I don't have no problem with those individual small families of Stokely Carmichael and Belafonte joining in at some level. Not the same degree as somebody who comes from descent from slavery. But people who just got here in 1980, you get nothing. And that's the way it should be. I shouldn't get nothing if I go to Nigeria right now, or if I go to Haiti, or if I go to Trinidad. And I won't get nothing. We don't understand what we're competing against. We don't understand. I was talking to a person that went to medical school in Trinidad. They get free medical school in Trinidad. And then come here and compete against us having paid for medical school with money we don't have because our family was oppressed in the most important moments in America. Pull up the chart. You got to understand this chart to understand why it's important to deal with ADOS. So effectively, not only was slavery and Jim Crow happening, there was a boom in the New Deal, in the form of a New Deal, in the form of all kind of unions and the growth of this new white middle class that black people were shut out of due to covenants and the like. I interviewed Rothstein. Go check out my interview with Rothstein, Richard Rothstein, who wrote the book Color of Law. We doing real work here. So what you see is that effectively, before the Depression in the 30s, the bottom 90 and the top 0.1 had the same amount of wealth share, of overall American wealth share. That was around, I think, 18% or something of the like. That means that it's severe inequality. Well, over the course of the time period between that 1930s and about 2008, 2010, what you saw is a rise that peaked at 1980, where the bottom 90 was taking home 40% of the wealth, and the top 0.1 was only taking home 7% of the wealth. It inverted, where now we've crossed again and we're at extreme inequality, which means the only way that you have elite life is to be able to access what your parents had, the privileges, the advantages in the 1950s. Well, what happens to black people, like the DOS, if their families were shut out in that period? They don't get any opportunity. They don't get any access. You look at, what's one of the things that's triggered this whole discussion is myself and Yvette Carnell have triggered a discussion around Kamala Harris and her identity and how problematic it is. Not only that, her career, from truancy laws to what she did with Mitrice Richardson, go watch Yvette's show to find out more. It's just problematic. Here's a woman who's Indian and Jamaican. That makes you black, but it doesn't make you American DOS. You have no bones buried here. So you're Indian from the Brahmin class, which is the most elite class. You're coming into a DOS community and putting parents in jail for truancy laws. I can't help but look at that through the lens of you coming from the Brahmin class.
Last year alone, we had 600,000 truant students in our elementary schools, which roughly matches the number of inmates in our state prison system. And is it a coincidence? Of course not. And as unacceptable as this problem is, I know we can fix it. In San Francisco, we threatened the parents of truants with prosecution, and truancy dropped 32%. So we are putting parents on notice. If you fail to take responsibility for your kids, we are going to make sure that you face the full force and consequences of the law. And this work to combat truancy is part of the broader oath that I swore today, and the oath upheld every day by the men and women of the Attorney General's office. Our mission statement includes a fundamental promise to encourage economic prosperity, equal opportunity, and tolerance, and to safeguard California's human, natural, and financial resources for this and future generations.
Then on the other side, your father is elite Jamaican. It's unclear even if he's Indio-Jamaican, which will make him Indian Jamaican, not black. That's unclear from all the research online about what your father has actually said. But presuming he is black Jamaican, how does being black Jamaican make you more American? How does being black Jamaican make you more African American? How does being black Jamaican make you more American DOS? Which is what everything hinges on. These jobs, from MSNBC to CNN to being somebody that runs on MLK Day at Howard, are premised on the cost of coming out of American DOS, slaves, and Jim Crow after. If you came here well after that, and somebody would say, well, Kamala came here in the mid-'60s, or was born here in the mid-'60s, and we've heard everything from her parents were involved with the civil rights movement to they were activists. Show me what they did. Stop telling me they're activists and just show me what they did. And even on top of that, at the end of the day, what we're dealing with is the fact that none of that matters Your family had elite access to privileges in these other places. Your father comes from a slave owner, and they owned a store. His family owned stores, and our stores were burnt down. Your mother was a Brahmin in India, which is the most elite class of Indian. So then, how can I expect you to speak for me, to speak for us, to speak for our struggles? And I don't expect you to. That's why I don't want to vote for you. And I'm talking about Kamala Harris at this point. Again, when you look at the wealth of Black America, bringing it up again, top 10% has 75% of our small amount of wealth. Those are largely boomers that came in through affirmative action and programs of the like that have been shut down. Understand that our voice needs to more and more come from the bottom 90%. Now, I'm not saying that people like Angela Rye that may come from the top 10 don't have a place, but I am saying that they can't be the only ones in the room, and they shouldn't even be the majority. I'm definitely saying that Joy Reid has no room at this table. She doesn't know enough. Well, I watched a recent video of Joy Reid. Joy Reid is on this video talking about people that vote for Obama for blackness and from going to Harvard. None of that was why people didn't vote for Barack Obama. You're so detached from the discussion. You've been all over the place grifting. You were like talking about conservatives when you were in college, and then you shifted to the griot, anything to get on. But what I'm telling you right now, it wasn't about blackness. No. This was about African Americanness, American DOSness, a discussion about lineage. And I think you don't understand that, Joy Reid. You don't understand that this isn't just about whether he can shoot a basketball or he knows the names of rappers or he can say hating. I'm so tired of these black pundits using words like hating. And, you know, you had Angela Rye telling black people just this morning that they're slow in the back of the bus and trolls and Russians. Come on, let's have a serious discussion about the fact that American DOS have been shut out of this country. Let's have a serious discussion why black men are incarcerated like we've never seen in any modern country. American DOS men. Let's have a serious discussion of where American DOS are supposed to be positioned and what they're owed. And understand, you might have to have that discussion with no reality of you getting anything from it, because you're not owed anything. And so this is where we're at. Yvette Carnell and myself created American DOS. The people that are talking about this thing, you should really look at their Twitter lines, because these are real people. I don't control no Russians. I don't know a Russian. But this is not at all Russians that are tweeting and sharing and having this dialogue. This is an awakening, a reckoning. Black America is waking up and having a discussion about how and why are we struggling when we built America. I just wanted to bring this discussion to y'all and have it out. This is Tone Talks. Please go to tonetalks.org to subscribe and donate. Share the channel. Yvette Carnell is going to be on tonight to hash this out at Breaking Brown on YouTube with her call-ins. If y'all want to call in Joy Reid or Angela Rye, you can call in. I'm asking everybody who watches this video, please tweet at Joyanne Reid. Please tweet at Angela_Rye. Please tweet at MSNBC. Please tweet at CNN Politics. Let them know you're not happy with what went down today and this weekend, that you expect American DOS to be the primary driver of the discussion on black politics as we go into the 2020 election, not only because we're almost the entire black population, but also because the only reason the black population is uniquely positioned is because of us. Thank you so much. Let's get it.
But you ain't been down south.
Yeah. Let me ask you, the original Spades, like most of y'all families was from the South,
A lot
right?
of our family from the south.
From the South.
Yeah.
Oh, it was all of y'all,
Down
right?
in the south. Me and Monk is close by, and Mario, we're close by. Me and Monk is exactly from Wilmington.
Okay.
He used to ride the bus with my mother.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, back in the day.
So, I mean, like that, because that's how, like used to be. Like in New York, it was a lot of us from the South.
Nah, from the
My
south.
family's from the South.
A lot of us came from the south.
From the South, right.
We came down. A lot of people from New York came from the south.
Right.
They didn't come from like Canada and shit like that.
Right.
They came from the south.
Right.
We were from Virginia on.
So being black meant like basically you from the South, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like that's what being black
Yeah.
it was, right?
That's what I was.
But now it's not like that. now.
Sure.
You got a lot of blacks that's not from the South.
You got a
Right.
lot of blacks that. Oh my God.
Right. Let me ask you a question. What do you think of an organization, for us that our forefathers?
I hope I see something like that.
Hold up. Our forefathers, we come from the South, right?
Right.
So what do you think of an organization just for us?
I would love to see that.
Right.
Because we don't have it.
We do got it. We do got it.
I don't know about it.
Right, yeah.
Because every other nationality got identity.
Right,
So
exactly.
we don't.
Right. I want to reiterate something I said with Fat Mike as far as our families coming from the South. Yes, a lot of our families come from the South and they migrated to New York. However, to my understanding, a lot of our families was already here in New York. A lot of our families was here in this country since it was 13 colonies.
There's a long shadow over America's past. Slavery. We all know that the North and South fought over it, but many Americans don't know that slavery also existed in our biggest northern city. Jen is here with this amazing story.
Haley, we're talking about New York City. A new exhibition takes a close look at slavery in New York, and we have a personal tour. Sudette Harry is a guide with the New York Historical Society.
Welcome to New Amsterdam. New Amsterdam is the original name of the New York colony. The first people to settle here are the Dutch, and they name it after a Dutch city. A big part of slave labor is going to be building the city, building the wall.
The Wall is now Wall Street. Today, it's famous for being the heart of the most important financial district in the world. But back in the early 1600s, this small area was the entire colony. The slaves lived outside of the Wall in the Land of the Blacks. That's where they also had a cemetery. In 1991, construction workers accidentally found that African burial ground, and historians put more time into researching slavery in New York.
Essentially what the Dutch did was that they scammed the Native Americans. So first thing they did was they counterfeited the money or counterfeited what Native Americans used to buy goods or trade goods between themselves. These are the kind of swindles and deals that went on in taking control of the island.
Kevin, why is this particular part of New York, at the end of Wall Street?
This sign shows that this is where the edge of the wall stood. This was the wall that kept, quote unquote, the Native Americans out. This was not only a barrier, but at the edge was where a market stood. Slave ships would have came in and slave trade would have existed, it was sold, and from that, either they were taken to different plantations or they were part of the larger Dutch West India Company that helped to create the streets like we see Broad Street, which was actually the first street cut in New York City by Stuyvesant. The slave trade took place here directly on Wall Street.
A lot of our families was here in this country since it was 13 colonies. We was here before it was the United States of America. It was just the 13 colonies of Britain. And, you know, we was all along the East Coast, 13 colonies, and we migrated to different parts of the country. We migrated to Chicago. Our families migrated to Detroit. Our families migrated to California. Our families was all over the 13 colonies of this country. And yes, there was already native, indigenous people here, brown skin, woolly hair. You know, there's a very deep history. It's a very complex history. The point is, our families was here since the 13 colonies of this country, not just the South. So, you know, the ADOS, I'm just learning about the ADOS, and so far what I see, I like. I'm glad to see a movement that's basically for us African Americans. Finally, to me, is overdue. It's long overdue. ADOS unites us. You know, whether you're a gang member, if you're a law-abiding citizen, you're still ADOS. If you're a professional athlete, or if you're a Democrat, Republican, whether you live on the East Coast, West Coast, Midwest, or Southern states, you're still ADOS. Whether you're wealthy, poor, work on Wall Street, whether we a lawyer, doctor, whatever we say we are, a Christian, a Muslim, or Israelite Jew, you're still ADOS. And ADOS, from what I see so far, is just focused on politics and economics, and that's a great focus. That's a great focus, politics and economics. You know, my interest in ADOS is more towards getting some sovereign land of our own. You know, the financial economic reparation, that's cool, you know, for those that's into that. You know, the financial reparation, that's cool. But my interest in ADOS is for African Americans to become a sovereign nation of our own.
African American sovereignty
Even if it's just 100, African Americans have an opportunity to build our own independent sovereign nation. Reparation in the form of sovereign land.
We've got to get back to the land. That's one of the things that in our emancipation and liberation, we are going to have to get back to. Because in creating a relationship with land, you create a relationship with nature. When you create a relationship with nature, it is with the cosmos, and with the cosmos is with yourself. So there's a cycle that we have to get back into.
Reparation in the form of sovereign land. That's my interest. Now, as far as reparation in the form of sovereign independent land, a lot of other brown-skinned, woolly-haired people may not be able to relate to that. Because a lot of brown-skinned, woolly-haired people, yes, they was descendants of slavery, but they come from nations that's already independent. They come to America to get American money, and they may not be able to relate to us wanting to get free.
We are back in Brooklyn, where Guyanese culture and pride are in full display as they celebrate Guyanese Independence Day.
Are you Ados? Here's the thing. On my father's side, no. Okay? We trace back to Guyana.
Shout out, respect to all the Guyanese Americans raising their flag high.
A sea of red, yellow, and green as hundreds of proud, flag-waving Guyanese Americans came together to celebrate their country's 53rd anniversary.
It's always a pleasure to celebrate my birth country.
I am a proud Guyanese, 100%.
Shout out and big respect to all the brown-skinned, woolly-haired immigrants in America. Truth is, a lot of other brown-skinned, woolly-haired immigrants who come here, their relationship with America is different. A lot of other brown-skinned, woolly-haired immigrants, they came to America by choice. They chose to be here. And they have a home, an independent home to return to. They're here basically to get American money and bring it back to their home. A lot of them want to bring it back to their home. They can convert the money and they can live better.
Are you Ados? Here's the thing. On my father's side, no. Okay? We trace back to Guyana. Ever since I was hearing about this whole Ados, from the minute I heard about it, it was like a division.
Yeah.
Amongst black people.
And as far as, I hear the little things, the little whispers in the air about, like ADOS is dividing. It's not that ADOS is dividing anybody. This has been overdue. African Americans uniting. In order for it to be a strong African diaspora, there have to be a strong ADOS. A chain is only strong as its weakest link. How am I supposed to unite with brown-skinned people from Zimbabwe and brown-skinned people from Guatemala when I'm not even united with the brothers of Detroit? I'm not even united with the brothers of Philadelphia. Right now, as it is, African Americans are not even united within ourselves. Our family structure is broken. So how are we supposed to join an African diaspora when African Americans are broken? We first have to repair ourselves as African Americans. Strong links make strong chains. African Americans, we got to repair ourselves as a nation so that we can be on an equal playing field. Right now, what do we have to offer an African diaspora? Right now, we have nothing to offer to an African diaspora. So, like I say, African Americans, we get on an even playing field with the other African nations. Then we can talk about a united African diaspora. After a united African diaspora, then we could talk about a united world. All nations come together, humanity. But thing is just steps. You can't walk before you crawl. You can't run before you walk. It's just natural steps of progression that have to happen first. African Americans, we got to repair ourselves as a nation so that we can be on an equal playing field. And then on another level, as far as the people who try to say ADOS is dividing, how can ADOS be dividing in a world that's already divided? I mean, people are already divided by their flags. How can ADOS be dividing in a world of division? This world is already divided. People love their flags. People are divided by their flags. And they raise their flags high. And they rep their flag. And their flag divides them from everybody else. If you really think about it, for so long, ADOS has never divided. That's part of our problem.
I have a dream.
We never divided ourselves. We never saw ourselves as a nation. So we never really divided ourselves. We always tried to embrace other nationalities. And really, that's part of our problem.
Right. Every nationality think we animals. The way I see it, we're not prejudiced.
Right.
As far as I see it,
right.
We're not prejudiced.
We accept everybody.
Right. And why we can't be accepted?
we so open-hearted, we try to embrace other nationalities. But people love their nationality. This is where we at in human history. In human history, we're at a point where people love their nationalities. They love their flags, and they're not gonna drop their flag. Try to get an average Caribbean person to drop their flag, to forsake their flag. They love their flag, they love their nation, they love their people. So you can't try to blame ADOS for doing the same thing. It's about time that we raise our flag. It's about time that we create a flag. I say ADOS, we need to really create a flag. After we repair ourselves, then we can join the African diaspora. Then we can join the rest of humanity. Then we could, we could push for African unity, and we could push for world unity, world peace. Then maybe one day we can drop all of these flags and just raise one flag, the human flag. Maybe in the far future we can have one flag representing all of humanity.